Now we're joined by Guy Leitch, who's editor of SAA Flyer magazine. Business unusual, the phrase that the Minister used there. So what's different this time with SAA?
Yeah, what's different is that I think they realised that they have yet again hit the wall, that they had given the previous CEO, or the currently suspended CEO, Monwabisa Kalawe, a little bit too long to turn it around. They'd given him 4.5 years to turn it around, and I don't think he was meeting any of his milestones. So they've suspended him. They've moved Nico Bezuidenhout back in from Mango. This is his second time. And he has immediately, as it were, hit the ground running and identified those immediate objectives that can and should have been accomplished already in what's called the 90-day turnaround plan. Let me say that this is not a new plan. This is simply those aspects of the long-term turnaround strategy which has been agreed and which is universally accepted as being a good strategy, are just being therefore aggressively sought after, chased down and implemented in terms of measurable milestones.
Guy, do you think Cyril Ramaphosa overseeing this is one of the reasons we could see a proper implementation of this plan? Like you said, this is not a new plan. We've seen plans before.
Yeah, I'm interested in that, in the whole tension, if you like, between Cyril Ramaphosa and Minister Nene, because I expected Cyril Ramaphosa to be at the AGM. It's after all his new baby, and yet there was Minister Nene making pronouncements. I'm not quite sure how it's all going to work out. I hope he cracks the whip and induces a sense of both urgency and the art of the practical. I think we are seeing that coming through. We are seeing some really difficult political decisions having been taken already, with the dropping particularly of the Beijing route. That's on its way out, as are the Indian routes under threat. So I think the airline is taking some really difficult decisions which probably needs political clout at the level of Cyril Ramaphosa to be able to do. So hopefully a good thing there.
So maybe that is the difference, that he's banged heads together. But like Eskom, you know, there's a minister, then there's another minister, then there's a CEO, there's a board. I mean, these guys must spend half their time just wondering who they're reporting to and who they can get to sign off the decision. Surely that's been a problem in the past.
I think it's a huge problem. I think that one of the problems that the SAA faces is this dual mandate. It's got to operate as a development organisation at the same time operate commercially, and those two are mutually exclusive. That in itself creates a whole fundamental set of tensions within the board. I think that we've seen weak leadership, if I may be so bold as to say, in the board itself up to now. We've seen a flat-out conflict between the chairperson and the previous minister, Lynn Brown. It's interesting that Lynn Brown lost that fight, and all of that is very bad for the airline. Obviously, it obviously lost three of its key board members. It's replaced them with good people, it needs to be said, with the right skills, both in corporate governance and in aviation services. So that's looking good. And at the same time, I think that if they can now, with hopefully Minister Ramaphosa's support, map out the road ahead, I think that they're actually going to accomplish that.
Guy, when's the 90-day up? Because there's a 90-day turnaround plan. And what would you like to see for you to say, this is working, this has been well implemented?
Okay, the 90-day turnaround is up on the 26th or perhaps the 28th of March. They have reported on the steps to date at the end of the first month. The objective of the 90-day turnaround strategy is to create 1.4 billion rands worth of savings. Now, that should be enough. Okay, now I know that the airline has reported a 2.55 billion rand loss. I think that loss needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. It's a pity that it reported an operating loss, but that operating loss was in the region of 400 million rand. So it wasn't that big, particularly as it can be addressed simply by taking out the two bad routes. It could operate profitably going forward. I think what they've done is they've put a whole lot of bad news into last year now, presumably to show up the previous currently suspended CEO. And I think that going forward we may yet see that the savings created by the 90-day turnaround strategy, or the short-term strategy, may be sufficient to push the airline back into profits.
Of course, it's always good to make your predecessor look bad, as bad as possible, so that whatever you do looks better. Sure. Is this SAA's last chance, or is there actually never a last chance for SAA?
Well, it should be its last chance, because it cannot go on bleeding the taxpayer at this rate. I mean, it's very hard to actually quantify the total amount that it's cost the taxpayer since it separated from Spurries 20 years ago. But the number is in excess of 20 billion rand. So it's losing 1 billion rand a year. And there's no reason for that. It's simply the taxpayer subsidizing the rich who travel. That's bad development stories anyway. The fact of the matter is that The airline is expected to fulfill a development mandate, and if it was to be just privatized, I suspect it wouldn't really fulfill the objectives that the state needs it to fulfill, which is, you know, bringing the world to Africa and taking Africa to the world and creating that multiplier that we need for business to work. But at the same time, is there really a problem flying to Beijing via Dubai? I mean, that's what we're going to see going forward. Do we really have to fly to New York non-stop? We can fly via Dakar, and it's much cheaper that way. This is prestige flag carrier stuff, which is old-fashioned, it's out of date. I think a lot can be done.
Thanks so much, Guy. That was Guy Leitch. He's the editor of SAA Flyer magazine.